I like to explore people's process, and there's a lot of fear, and I like to celebrate how they come about into and living their best lives. You just did that, right? You're working in insurance. You love what you had an idea. So I really want to talk about really what's going through your mind. Like, I know you had that idea, but how do you feel that moment before you give that 2 weeks?
Yeah. Oh man, it was quite the experience. So my thing was just sort of chronic discontent. You know what I mean? Like I was going to work. I was going to work every day, and on the surface, like really, and this is why there was so much cognitive dissonance, because I knew I had a lot to be grateful for, and I knew I'd worked my whole life to have this good job, and I had a decent paycheck for someone coming right out of school, and I felt fine. Felt like I was doing everything I was supposed to do, but I just had that thing where I woke up and I'd wake up and I just dread the day. And, you get the Friday, Saturday to go out with your friends and be stupid and drink. And that's what I was looking forward to. And I'm like, dude, there just has to be more than that.
For sure.
I didn't have the courage to quit. I knew I wanted to for a couple of years, and it took me a long time to kind of, I was building a studio in the background. I had some money saved and was doing some things, but ultimately there was never a right time. There was never a right time. So I just pulled the plug, didn't know what I was going to do, and just said, figure it out. Right. And so that's when I started playing acoustic guitar around Boston. I was producing different songwriters. I was doing some creative writing. I had a camera. I was learning how to use that and just learning what I liked and what I didn't. And it was a scary time, but it was the most important time of my life.
Well, great. And so, like, when you decided to do that, you were just so filled with discontent that you just kind of took the jump and like, I'll figure it out. Or I know that you were creating some content here and there before then, and then you were just like, I'm going to commit to this.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, so I had been writing music, and I, while working, had some channels with like singer-songwriter stuff, and I've always been like, creative and putting stuff out there. But it was like just driving to work thinking like you're praying for a flat tire. It's like, dude, you need to make adjustments now, or because 20 years is going to go by quick, So that was kind of, I didn't really have a plan. It's funny. People ask me that all the time. Should I make a jump? What should I do? And it's like, if I could go back, I perhaps would have been a little bit more methodical with the landing pad,
right?
Or started the experimentation a little earlier. I still would have done it versus not doing it. If I had to do it all over again, the exact same, I mean, fine. People need that period of exploration, and they need to wander and test the waters and see what life is about. But yeah, maybe perhaps a little bit more methodical in my approach, because it's scary when the bank account starts drying up. You don't have money for the, you know what I mean? So
absolutely,
yeah.
So, and because for me, it's always through experience, it's always been time over money for me. Like, time in my life is so much more important than benefits, because I held on to a job. I made this jump last July. It was the day after 4th of July, and I was working in a warehouse, and my boss came back to talk to me, and I was just like it just like I just puked it out of my mouth. I was like, today's my 2 weeks, and he's like, oh, and I'm like, I never my heart was pumping, it's July already, so I'm like, I'm sweating, but I mean, like, my heart is pumping. I'm like, and I just did it. I just jumped. I just did it, and I took a serving position, which has been, which is afforded me that time, and it has absolutely transformed my life. Like you said, hoping for a flat tire on the way to work, like anything to extend, me not being there,
Right.
And like, I'm hanging in there because benefits. I don't know. I mean, like, really. I mean, no, but
I know. Believe me, I get it.
So, and like, and if you talk to some people, they're like, yeah, well, benefits are really important. And they absolutely are. I'm not taking away that, like, they absolutely are. But my soul, like, I'm dying inside. And I had already come from a dark place, and I'm not going back there. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I took it. So I took this jump, and I started doing this thing. And yeah, it's been slow, but I'm progressing, slowly but surely. And
there you go.
It's been,
how did you feel after the immediate 2 week after you gave you 2 weeks?
So
relieved or
absolutely relieved, but terrified, right? Because I needed to figure out, how I'm really going to put this thing together. You know what I mean? I need to
Mm.
figure out like really so what I did is I started a small sports and entertainment agency because I had worked in sports years ago, loved it. And I wanted to do like small cause related events because the driving force of the agency is going to be giving back to the community, raising money through events. And I wanted to give it a shot, but like I have no money. At that point I had no computer, right? And like, insert, the Gary V or whatever. You're like, I all I had was my iPhone, so I started. I went down to the county office and I registered a DBA, and I got going. And things cost a lot of money. Events cost money, and I started to, and then somebody out of nowhere was just like, actually, it was like my buddy. I told him what I was doing. And he's like, who does my production? He's like, well, what's the entertainment side? And I was like, I don't really know. I had like things, but it was always like, oh, when I do this, you know what I mean? This is what I'm going to do. He's like, we'll start tomorrow. Come up here. We'll do a podcast. And I was like, all right, so we're just kind of messing around. And I did the first one. He's like, you were actually not bad at that. He's like, you want to do another one? I was like, yeah, sure. Let's do another one. And so I reached out to a friend of mine, and this thing is kind of evolved. And, we're doing another show launching soon. And the event part of it is obviously a little bit on hold, but I'm trying to see how we can maneuver that. But these are all things that you just I think that like what you alluded to, like in a quote or something, it's like where you just have that spark of motivation creates like a whole bunch of imagination, right? Like
Right.
once I get my feet going and I see that it's not so bad, like running in the rain, man. You're running in the rain and you start to feel good. You don't even pay attention to the rain, to rain falling on your head, man. You don't even pay attention to being wet. You know what I mean? Like I don't pay attention to everybody around me who loves me saying that, Darren, is this the right thing for you to do? And I don't pay
Right.
attention to that because ultimately this is my life. This is how I'm going to spend my time here. And just as long as, I know that they love and support me, that's all I need. Like, because I'm not really concerned about them. I don't know about you, but like I'm concerned about maybe the guy like when I was tending bar like 4 or 5 years ago that I'm serving a drink is like, oh, I remember him when he was nothing. You know what I mean? Like, look at him trying to do this. Like that's the thought that'll stick in my head and deter me from doing something like beautiful in my life. You know what I mean? So it has been a lot of focus, that
Right.
that I've had to
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, sort of manufacturing that momentum. It's funny. It's like that's really what it's about. It's just like getting the wheels rolling. And even if you don't know exactly, like to your point, like exactly how things will materialize, it's like, well, as long as when you're moving and when you're doing things, you're putting yourself in a position to piece things together. Whereas when you're sitting there and you're thinking, and you're just, that's why, we're both saying, yeah, the money thing's scary, like not having the money. And like, I don't know, maybe you do something a little different, maybe you don't, but it's also being broke and terrified that creates massive action,
Right.
so it's almost like you need that too.
Yeah.
It's a really an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. And sometimes fear can be turned into, a positive motivator, right? I
Oh,
mean,
for
like,
sure.
it's the one thing that gets me going. But staying within that track is small disciplines, right? Because for a guy like me, I need to have small wins in a day so I can look back at something. Like I'm not the guy that goes out and in one day will really like wow you. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like I have to do small things in my day. I have to realize that like that's who, like that's who I am. And then I think that's really what's really important. I think that who you are. So when you made that, you're like, there's always that like sense of confidence in the back that although you may not wear it on your sleeve, right? Some people don't like always wear it, but like there's something in the back of their head, like, like I know I'll be okay. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I knew that I would be okay, but I just had to, I move at a snail's pace, basically. You know?
Yeah, I mean that's fine. I would press you would say like you know what I mean, like even the biggest most monumental looking accomplishments, whoever wherever they happen to, it's just it truly is like little things that add up over time. And that's you know, when I look at my journey and the things that I've wanted to accomplish, and the things that I've wanted to do, like the common thread from me stopping along the way is like things feel too big, and you look up and you're like, I can't, I mean that's forever away, but really it's not. It's just a bunch of, you know, mountains or little rocks is the way I like to say it. And so it's just truly continuing forward. It's amazing how much that theme continues to reappear in my life. It's like if you are committed to a process of showing up and putting out, ultimately, you know, big things happen, you know. So
That's
that's the
true.
way I look at that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I mean, it's absolutely true. I mean, having to get up day in and day out, and like still being like, you know, there's some days where you don't even love this new thing that you're doing, right? Because it's hard. You know what I mean? And there just has to be like one thing. I get an on like an incredible amount of satisfaction out of doing things that I don't want to do. That's been the only I think that's been the most significant change in my life. Now, and I'm sure, and you talk about it all the time, but doing things that you don't want to do it will, I guess, springboard you leaps. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you can deal with that. But what's your advice to somebody that you know does like? It's easy for us to say, yeah, do things that you don't want to do. But I mean, like,
Right.
how do you tell somebody to do that?
Well, I don't. I've talked about this a lot. Like, I don't know if there's a right answer, and here's why, and here's how I look at that. Because in anything, right? It's like passion versus purpose. Ryan Holiday breaks this down nicely. It's like passion is that sort of excitement you get. It's a dopamine blast, and you know things are great and it's exciting. It's starting a new podcast, getting the equipment, having everything set up, rocking, rolling, and then you're 4 weeks in and you're like, okay, I got 5 downloads today. Like this sucks. This is a little discouraging. All right, passion subsides. Purpose is knowing that it's a wave and there's going to be massive highs and crazy lows, and purpose at the end of the road allows you to get through the lows. It allows you to have the approach where it's like, okay, this is par for the course. Doesn't mean I suck. It means that I got to figure it out, got to make adjustments, got to keep going, but this is what happens. Anyone who's ever done anything great, you know, has sort of made this approach. Now, the interesting thing is someone that, you know, I love to just kind of explore and dive into different projects. You got to know when to let something go too.
Mm,
Like, so you know what I mean? Like there are times that
mm,
I'm beating my head against a wall and I'm like, am I doing this just to do it? You
right.
know, like I ultimately just stopped doing a podcast that I've been doing for about 9 months now. And, you know, there were some pros for sure, but like I had to make the decision that's like, this is a time investment. And is it the right one? And does it align with what you want most?
Right.
Because that's important, right? A lot of times, you know, we do things just to do them so that we feel like we're working, so that we're checking off boxes. And it's like, what do you want most and how do you get there? So to answer your question, 100%, right? You have to do things you don't want to do. In a lot of ways, that separates the people that do great things from the ones that don't. You have to be willing to fight through the BS and take your losses and get back up. But you also have to know and be sure that you're doing the things that matter. And that's a conversation you have to have with yourself. So that's how I differentiate it.
Cool. Now, so you were talking about purpose, so like, I don't know if you ever, so I listened to a little bit about a little Jordan Peterson, and he talks about the difference between doing something that is morally right, and then like, or what you think is meaningful, and then like, and what you want to do, and what you want to do being a luxury, and what you think is meaningful is almost like a moral, obligation,
Right. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I can tell that like you're not just like you just don't do motivational things for because you like I mean I know they resonate with who you are, but I mean you've got to be doing this to inspire other people, and you probably get a lot from that. So like talk to me a little bit about like some of your viewers and your engagement and how that makes you feel, and in turn what's the product from that.
Yeah, well, I agree with how Jordan puts that, right? I mean, and I think his point is you have to you're morally obligated to do something with your life. Everyone has something to give to the world, and for me, it's been, like I said, it's been a process, and I'm not even sure in 10 years if I'll be doing the same thing. Like I just don't know, and I'm completely okay with that. But what I do know is I'll be all in whatever it is I'm doing, So it's funny, if I look back 6 years, even, the idea of motivation uh, never crossed. I mean, this was not intentional. I was in a down spot when I left my job, and similar to you, it was the first time I came across something like that, and it really helped me get through. It really helped me with the highs and lows of, I mean, you don't make a ton of money playing acoustic shows around Boston, right? So it was nerve-wracking for me. And I remember that the whole idea was it would have been very easy for me to go right back into my own world and make that paycheck again and exchange safety for the excitement or reverse that, exchange the excitement and the opportunity and the joy in life for that paycheck. And so the first video I ever wrote on this channel is called Ode to Excellence. And it was a promise to myself, literally like, Eddie, let yourself fall, like put your back against the wall, have the courage once to see what happens, right? Because I had never been courageous in my life. I'd always done what I was supposed to do. I'd always followed orders. And it was like, be a little adventurous, just try. Right. And that's where the idea came from. And it was like, I wanted to, like, I always loved the idea of the iPhone commercials, right? How like they can sell you an iPhone without ever showing you an iPhone. It's just people dancing around, and it's just this beautiful feeling, this emotive, 90-second clip. And I'm like, well, I want to tell my story, but I want to make it feel like that. And that's kind of where I combine the two. And that's what my platform's been. It's like storytelling, my highs, my lows. And I want to do it in a way like human beings, we're not rational at all. We're emotional. And so I want to do it in a way that is emotive, that does help people. And if they can use it, that's awesome, because we have a lot in common, whether we're entrepreneurs, athletes, I mean, going through certain situations in our lives, whatever, fantastic. If it's not for you, totally cool too, move along. But the process means so much to me, and I enjoy it and get so much value from it, and it helps people as well. And those stars sort of align.
Yeah, because I find that when I engage with like some people that I haven't seen in a while, or like somebody who just that kind of I talk to about what I'm doing, and they're like, well, what's wrong with me getting up and going to work every day and getting my paycheck? I'm like, dude, there's nothing wrong with, but like what I'm trying to speak to is that thought process that in your head that is setting a subtle message that like you could be doing something that like will really fulfill your time here, it, you know what I mean? Like, and then you get the, well, I have kids, and I have responsibilities, that I have to pay for, which we all do, right? But it's just starting on a small level, you know what I mean? And like I just want people to understand that we all have something going on in their brains that are like, that's detrimental to our self-growth, or maybe it stunted our growth years ago. And I just think it's so important to, like, while you're here, to like experience life on a grand scale.
And to do what's right, to your point, for you. Because I have one of my best friends, and I talk to this guy almost every day. He's done well in the corporate world for sure. But he's there for 8 hours and is so content with that, because going home to his house in the suburbs with his family, that means the absolute world to him. Like, he's created this life and this idea of happiness. Maybe he didn't create it. I mean, it exists in his world that's so different from mine. I couldn't even, like, that to me is a prison. To him, it's
Right.
everything. And so it's, you know what I mean? It's balancing the two
Yeah.
things and understanding, what, as long as you're clear and you find out, you make the effort to understand what makes you happy and you drive towards that. I feel like that's what life's about.
Right. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, because if you're cool with spending your time like that, getting up in the morning and doing that, and then getting home and enjoying the weekends and doing things around your yard and taking care of your home, and that's so awesome. You know what I mean? But um I remember I was in college, and I was like waiting for the train in Newark to go home. I live on the Jersey Shore, and I'm sitting there with a bag of laundry, and I heard a lyric from a song from um, from the Postal Service, and it was like something like they want to experience life and like that, all that it had, and I was just like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Because like I was miserable. You know what I mean? I don't know. It was just a really tough time in my life. A best friend of mine had just died, and I just didn't know like what life was all about. And I started to think that like that life that we were just discussing maybe wasn't for me. And then I felt lost because I didn't know what life was really for me. And I tried to force it from there on out. You know what I mean? Until like an ultimate, like a star, I just imploded. And, and I've come to find out that like this self exploration, this putting myself back together has been the most beautiful experience in my life. And I just want people to know that like if they're going through that time where like, and it's in the middle of their life or wherever they are in their life, that it's okay. You know what I mean? There's a lot of drive from society that makes you believe that if you're not on that trajectory that we've just been speaking about, that your life
Yeah.
sucks. you know
Right. And that's why it's so important that you're doing this, right? I mean, because you've lived it and you've experienced it and you've been broken. You put yourself together and you know about, some of the lows, and you've experienced some of the highs, and people will really resonate with that, from someone that doesn't just talk, but is sitting here being proactive and change. Like, it's hard to find the courage and the strength to do that. So that roadmap that you can provide to people is pretty badass. I mean, it's really, I think it's going to go a long way.
Thanks, man. And I think back to what we were talking about, like with about fear, like this is me doing this show has 1000% been a fear exercise, right? Like just hopping on here is terrifying. I follow you online, but I've never had a conversation with you. But you and I have something in common, so it works. But it's tough, and I'm sure that's the way you felt too. You know what I mean? But you had played in front of people before and stuff like that. Was it different when that fear, did it carry over into creating content, or was it you're just like, oh, I know I can do this?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I mean, everything connects in a weird way.
Uh-huh.
It's easy to. I mean, I sit here and do this in my room all day, and there's nothing scary about that, right? So, like,
Right.
one of the things is like I guess you could worry about how it's received, but actually doing it is a different type of thing. But I is particularly in like my early 20s, I was so terrified to speak that like I'd get in front of a crowd or a room or an audience and I couldn't think clearly. Like, you just feel like, and so I struggled with it. And then, playing shows for that year, I learned some things. I didn't get rich doing it, but I learned how to be comfortable. I learned how to stay composed and in a lot of ways entertain and communicate to a room. And then it's like you take that into the mic and you bring that there. And then it's like, now you're doing lives, which was for me, going live at one point it just was different. It's vulnerable. There's no redos. It's like what you're out there. And so what you do is it, period.
Yeah.
And so this podcast I've been doing, like I said, the one I just kind of was doing for 9 months. Well, one of the things I gained a lot from it. I turn a camera on now and I can talk, and I'm pretty comfortable talking, and I can go live, and I don't really think about that it's live anymore because I have confidence in myself. I'm really giving Ryan Holiday props today, but he has another quote that says confidence is earned. And I believe that. It's like you just continually prove to yourself over and over and over and over again that you can get it done, and you start to believe that. And that's a powerful thing.
Yeah. So everything that you've been doing, creating that content, talk to me a little bit about your company and where, and how that became and where it is now.
Sure. So it started on YouTube, and that was kind of the hub originally, so I started just posting videos there, productions once a week. And then, kind of taking the audio and distributing it to different carriers, so Spotify, Apple Music, all those places. So it started as just a channel, to communicate entertainment. And then there was sort of a business pivot where, I have clients that I'm consulting in their approach and how they communicate, making videos for people, speech writing for executives. So it evolved into a media company. Again, not something that was planned, but just following what I liked, working hard at it, trying, like, the goal is always to become the 0.01%, right? You want to be the best at whatever the hell it is you do.
Sure.
And so that's, helped me open some doors, and that's really, what it is now, a media production company.
Right, man. That's great. And that's cool to see how just that small little, that little mustard seed of willingness, right, built out to this.
That's it, man. That's it. Yeah.
That's great. All right, man. Well, listen, I got one last question for you. So to that person right now that is like thinking about changing themselves, whether it be physically, professionally, mentally, spiritually, what's your advice to them?
Stop thinking, because you'll sit there and you'll constantly find ways to talk yourself out of it, or feel inadequate, or never be enough, or never feel like it's the right time. Just go. And when you go, you learn to pick pieces up along the way and make something of them. So just start.
Very cool, man. And I really appreciate your time. This has been great. Great to get to know you. I really appreciate it, brother. Take care, man.
You got it.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.